building a recurring revenue web design agency. And of course, my tool of choice is WordPress. This business model can work with any kind of web software, but of course I use WordPress, and my Twitter QR code is down there in the corner. I would love to connect with you if you are a Twitter kind of person. That's how Michelle and I connect so frequently. And that's my connection point of choice. So I want to tell you a little bit about, I kind of already did, how we're living our dream. This is my cute little family. And if you look over on the right-hand corner, you can see a QR code. That's our Instagram travel channel. So if you feel like following along on Instagram, that's really the only thing my wife cares about tonight is, did you mention the Instagram channel so that people can follow us there? My wife looks after all of that. But as I said, we started traveling in 2018 full-time. We started in our RV. Right now I'm at my parents' guest house, or not my parents' guest house, my parents' house in their guest room. These are the boys' bunk beds behind me. But usually we would be in our RV, or we travel overseas, 16 countries. And the thing that we found out that we loved is that at the end of this, you're going to be able to ask all the questions you'd like. Now, my little guy, this is him when he was 9 years old. He's always making me ask questions. And so if you have questions, please feel free. I would love for you to jump in and ask those questions. And at the end, we'll specifically have a time for questions if you're not in the mood to interrupt, but I would like it if you did. But it's up to you. Okay, so we're all adrenaline junkies. One of the things that we love to do while we're traveling on the road is ride roller coasters. And when we started traveling in 2018, we found out how much we love roller coasters. Not that we didn't believe we did, but we really believe we do. So we've been to all the Six Flags parks, -1. We've been to all of the Cedar Fair parks, -1. So we've got to get to Kansas City, and we've got to get to Six Flags in Dallas. But what we found out is that while we're traveling on the road, we love experiencing roller coasters, but we hate roller coaster revenue. We wanted something that was reliable, dependable every single month. Even if I don't sell a new client a website, we want to make sure that our revenue is what it needs to be so we can keep going and riding roller coasters without having to worry about the bills, or without me having to make sales calls. And so what happened from 2011 to 2019 is we would do this roller coaster thing, and we all know it, is that you get a deposit because you sold a project, and then you execute the project. You don't have any revenue coming in while you're doing that. And then you get the website live, and then you get another bump of revenue. And then there's this dip while you're looking for the next client. And so it's this roller coaster of revenue. So I had to figure out how we're going to get off this roller coaster of revenue. And in 2019, that's when I changed my business model altogether. And that's what I'm going to chat with you about today. So the roller coaster revenue from 2011 to 2019, I did a custom designed websites for a British pub, a limousine service, a plumber, a realtor, a French fry shop, a furniture store, a yoga studio, a summer camp. Basically anybody who needed a website, I wanted to build them a website. But the challenge was, while I had done really, really great with customer service, and I joined the local chamber of commerce, and I was getting referrals from people who liked my work, I didn't really have a marketing strategy. My marketing strategy was basically referrals or panic. Those were the two modes that I existed in. So somebody would call and say, hey, I really like the website you did for so-and-so, or nobody would call and I would go straight into panic mode. So out of those clients from 2011 to 2019, I built about 80 custom sites, roughly one a month. And I got 20 of those clients to stick around for managed service. So 20 clients at, I think between $50 and $100 a month, something like that. You could do the math pretty quickly. I wasn't paying my bills with recurring revenue. I was relying on custom in order to pay my bills. In 2019, I decided to make a change. In 2019, I said, forget this. We'd started RVing. And so I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to build websites for campgrounds. So what am I going to do to grow recurring revenue? I'm going to create a templated WordPress website. I use Divi. You can use whatever you'd like, specifically for campgrounds, because campgrounds have basically the same kinds of things they need, whether they're a large campground or a small campground. They need a rates page. They need a page for the facilities. They need a photo gallery. They need their homepage. They need a contact page. And then, small modifications and variations from there. So I built that. And between 2019 and 2022 is when I got to that 80 clients number. So in the first time around, it took 8 years for me to get to 80 clients, and only 20 of them stuck around for managed hosting. The second the second approach, I got to 80 clients between 2019 and 2022. I figured out how to launch a new WordPress website in 4 hours. And I had all 80 of those clients on a monthly recurring service. So I wasn't getting the peaks and valleys of the custom design. I was building slow, reliable, recurring revenue. So now I could go 2 and 3 months at a time without bringing on any new clients and know exactly what my revenue is going to be, which financially, for a family that travels, this is a big deal, because there were times before that point in time where I would have to go out and actually go cold call, door to door, find people, meet people, try and solicit new clients. And I can't do that if I'm on the other side of the country in my RV. So now I was able to build monthly, stable, recurring revenue by focusing on a single industry. And that's kind of the first stage of building monthly recurring revenue. Now, lots of people do this with custom design. As I said, I did that for my first 11 years, or for my first 8 years of business. There are strategies to get a higher percentage of those clients on monthly recurring revenue. You offer every single one of the managed hosting, for instance. I missed that opportunity in a lot of cases. But what I found is that instead of doing the custom work, I could do a templated design. So we're going to dig a little bit more into that. And initially, a lot of web designers are like, I'm going to get bored of that really quickly. Clients don't want a website that matches everybody else in their industry. And we're going to tackle some of those ideas and discover if this could be a fit for you, or if this is completely not a fit for you and you're going to stick with the agency the way you have it. A lot of people have built really great agencies on custom design with a monthly managed hosting or retainer. That's not the model that I'm going after, and I want to share a little bit about why. So first, the model that I go after is pretty simple. You choose an industry, you create WordPress templates for that industry, you sell the templates as a service for $0 up front and a monthly service. And there's a strategy behind why we do $0 up front. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. And then number 4, repeat. We're going to do this over and over and over and over and over as many times as possible. So where do you start? How do you build that industry? So there's a few steps in building out this service model. Today, we're going to talk specifically about choosing an industry and marketing to that industry. This, I think, is the biggest hurdle for people to figure out if they want to move to a business model that is based on websites as a service specific to a recurring revenue model. So we're going to get over that hill today, and then you'll be able to figure out the rest, or we could chat later. I hope you QR code my Twitter, because I would love to hear your questions afterwards as well. So why do we choose a single industry? This is one of the biggest conversations that I have with web designers who want to move to this model. Why a single industry? There are so many industries that could use a model like this. There are so many industries with terrible websites. Yes, but why choose a single industry? One reason: focus. Because it helps you focus everything from the service you provide, how you can scale up that service, how you build out those websites, and how you market to that industry. So let's talk a little bit about how to find that industry for you. Okay, choosing an industry. This is a little bit like throwing the dart on the dartboard. You want to hit that bullseye. So an industry for you could look like an industry that you've enjoyed working in. That could be something, the job you did out of college, or an industry that you've worked in before and you really, really enjoyed it. Or maybe this is you've served 3 or 4 clients in a specific industry and you find that you can talk their talk, their pain points, how to find solutions for them. So this might also be an industry you grew up in. So maybe you had a family member who owned a business and you kind of saw how that business ran from the inside out. So growing up, my grandma owned a preschool. So there's potential there for me to say, I know enough about the preschool industry because that's how I grew up. And I could also talk to other people who worked in that industry and learn more about it. A hobby where you know the industry inside and out. So maybe you're an avid golfer. You talk the talk, you walk the walk. You know how many pars are on a course. Obviously, I don't. I'm not a golfer, so that wouldn't be a great industry for me, but that might be a great industry for you. What are the things that you know? You know, if you love music, well, maybe you understand music stores inside and out, or music instrument manufacturers inside and out, or accessories, or sound systems, or something like that. So is there a hobby that you know inside and out? And the last option that I've found can be successful is if you know a salesperson who knows the industry. And there's a couple options here. You could partner with that salesperson, so they do the sales, you do the execution. The other option could be that you just pick their brain and you ask them to give you all the inside scoop, you know, because they're coming from a sales perspective. They know the words to use, they know the pain points, they know when to reach out to, you know, somebody who's in that industry. So I'll give you an example of this one. The year before I went to college, so between high school and college, I decided to work for a year at a restaurant. Somebody walked in with their resume at 12:05, right in the middle of rush hour, and handed their resume to a manager. And the manager said, "Thank you." And as soon as that person walked out the door, he put the resume in the garbage. Not because that person was unqualified, not because they were a bad person, not because they were poorly dressed, but because it was so obvious to him, if you're trying to get the manager's attention during 12 o'clock rush hour, you don't know this industry well enough to work here. And so that's what we don't want to do. We don't want to present that idea. We don't want to say like, hey, dentists have money. Maybe I'll build websites for dentists. And you show up and present yourself like you have no understanding of the industry. So you have to figure out that industry on the inside and out. A great opportunity for that is to partner with or bring on a salesperson as a consultant who knows that industry. You know, somebody who's wants to be partially retired. You know, the guy who used to sell the sprinkler systems to the golf courses might be the great salesperson who can sell websites to golf courses now that he or she wants to be semi-retired. So there's just some ideas there. So if you have a moment, just put in the chat, if you've been thinking of something, if you think of an industry, even if you're like, Adam, this isn't for me, but this is a cool, I like hanging out. It's all good. Put it in the chat. Is there an industry that you can think of that resonates with you on one of these? Either an industry that you've enjoyed working in, an industry that you grew up around, a hobby where you know the industry inside and out, or somebody you know who is a salesperson in an industry, maybe a close friend or a relative, or an industry where you see potential and you think you might be able to connect with a salesperson there. So I have technical challenges, and so if I try and look in the chat, I'm probably going to mess up the whole Zoom and presentation, but please feel free to put that in the chat, and I'll check those out later, and you know, go ahead and comment on each other's posts in that space. Okay, now what we do is, now that you have an idea of an industry, or maybe you've settled on an industry, I recommend going with a segment of a segment. So you want to take that industry as a whole. Let's say for me, that could be the hospitality industry. And then a segment of that is campgrounds. And then a segment of that could be campgrounds in North America. Right? I don't really want to be trying to get marketing all over the world. I don't want to reach every single campground on the planet. I want to be that kind of focused. I don't want to do hotels and glamping spots and all those things. In my case, for campgrounds, I wanted to be very specific on what is that segment of a segment. So now you're going to take that industry that you thought of, and you could create a segment based on geography, or you could create a segment based on their product or service offering. So an organic shop, a premium shop, a budget shop, an American-made shop. Or you could create a segment based on who is their customer. Are they intending their business to serve kids or families or singles or couples? So for instance, you could say, you know, if your industry was golfing, let's go back to that one just for example, you could say golf courses in New York State that are premium golf courses, premium membership golf courses, because it's very likely that a premium membership golf course in New York State has a completely different audience and completely different needs than a budget-friendly golf course in California. And so you've taken this segment of a segment, and what that does is it really helps you focus What is the product or service? How are you going to create the service specifically for them? And how are you going to market specifically to them? Okay, so I've got an example here. And actually, before we get to the example, here's how I would evaluate if that industry is actually going to serve your business well. So we've got 125 rule. So first thing you need to do is figure out how many businesses make up 100% of that industry. So quick Google search, how many golf courses are there in New York State, for instance, or how many golf courses are there in the United States, or how many golf courses in North America? Again, just an example. So that's the 100. We need to know that number to start with. The next, could 20% of those businesses use a website as a service? So for instance, in Canada, we have a lot of coffee shops. There are a lot of them, but most of them are franchise owned. And so the question, could 20% of those businesses use website as a service? The answer specifically for Canada or our area of Canada is probably not, because I'm not going to sell an individual website to the franchise. It's going to have to be an independent owned business. So that's the 20%. Could 20% of the industry actually use your website as a service? Next, if 5% of the businesses in the industry became clients, could you build a sustainable business? Is 5% of the industry enough to actually build a proper sustainable business? So we've got an example here. We're going to use pizza shops in New York State. It seems completely appropriate for tonight's meetup. So there are 5,719 pizza shops in New York State. I didn't make this up. I Googled it. And so that's the 100. So what is 100% of the market? Well, we know that some of those are the Pizza Huts and the Domino's and Sbarro's and those types of chains, right? They don't need a website from us. So could 20% of the pizza shops actually use a custom designed website that doesn't come from franchise and head office? Well, the good news is about 55% of pizza restaurants are independent, which now gives us a market of 3,145 pizza shops, specifically in New York State. We're not even talking about when you start to expand your business to, larger regions, the entire country, the entire world, the entire universe. That is an entirely new open market. But specifically in your segment of a segment, could 20% of your industry use a website provided by you? Yeah, in this example, yes. That answer is yes. Okay, 5% now means 285 restaurants. So the question for the 5 is, if 5% of those clients, 5% of those businesses became clients, could you build a sustainable business? Is there enough market in 5% to build a sustainable business? Now, if you have to answer no to any of these questions, then it's time to try a different segment of the industry. But in the example of pizza shops in New York, using real numbers, 5%, 285 restaurants means that you could build $57,000 a month recurring revenue if you charge 285 restaurants a $200 a month service plan. Now, if you said these restaurants can sustain a $500 a month service plan or a $1,000 a month service plan, and we're going to include an email newsletter, or we're going to include social media management, or we're going to do some kind of online ordering integration, or whatever it is that you want to offer, those numbers go up. If you say, listen, 5% is nice, but I can go after 7% of the market on a $200 a month service plan, you're looking at a $70,000 or $80,000 a month recurring revenue based on only 7% of the market in just New York State. Now, as you get close to the border, what are the chances that some of those clients own restaurants in bordering states, or they have a cousin who owns a restaurant in another state? And that's where the referral engine starts to grow. They would say, like, hey, you should hang out with Michelle. She really, really knows pizza shop websites. And this is a really great service. She's always on time. It's always reliable. There's always new business coming in. $200 a month. I couldn't justify giving that up. And so that's where the referral engine starts to grow. This is a challenge in the custom world because a plumber doesn't necessarily refer you to the French fry restaurant, because that's different worlds. Whereas if you become the expert in a specific industry, that's where you're going to see that reliable referral engines start to grow. So 285 restaurants, it's only 5% of the independent market at a $200 a month service is $57,000 a month. So in the chat, could you build and sustain your own income on $57,000 a month? Let's go ahead and put that in the chat. Anybody put a thumbs down, go for it. And I'll send Cameron after you. He can come deal with you guys. If $57,000 a month isn't going to cut it for you, that's totally cool. Probably time to move on from the Zoom call, but that's cool. Now what? So what is the question? Okay, the numbers make sense, but where do we start? Well, now that you have focused your audience to a segment of a segment, you can now figure out what are the ways to reach that audience. So there's probably blogs for pizza shop owners in New York State. There's probably a pizza shop owner Facebook group. There's probably a podcast for pizza shop owners in New York State. There's probably email newsletters, you know, the people who supply the pizza pans and the cardboard boxes and all the food supplies. They have all those people on email lists. So maybe you can get in front of that email list. There's YouTube channels of people who do marketing for pizza shops, and maybe they do or don't sell the website portion. Maybe they just talk about marketing in general. Maybe they just talk about Facebook ads for pizza shops, in which case you can come alongside and partner with them. And there's probably conventions for pizza shop owners and associations and organizations. But now that you've narrowed it down, you're not saying, I'll do a website for anybody. And there are 1,000 conventions in New York State that I could go to for business owners every year. Instead, you're going to go and really, really focus on that one that's going to resonate with the audience that you've chosen. So now we're going to talk about your marketing website. So now you've got a hold of the audience. They're like, hey, so-and-so really knows their stuff. We really want to deal with that person. We really want to work with that person, or we'd like to find out more. You're going to create a marketing website that specifically speaks to that audience. So something really blatantly obvious for a domain name would be like pizzashopwebsites.com. You know, something that just blatantly speaks to that audience. You don't want to necessarily come up with something funky, although you can. But if you go with something just blanket obvious, that's a great way to really grab their attention, not only in search results, but also memorability, pizzashopwebsites.com. And also, even from the moment they land on your website, you want them to know that you're the expert in their little tiny segment of a segment. You want to be that big fish in that small pond. In this case, that example of the small pond is a starting potential revenue of $57,000 a month and growing from there. So you're going to speak to your target audience with your domain names, your package names, your imagery, your call to action, your blog content, your good, better, best templates built specifically for New York pizza shops. Those are the things you need to have on your marketing website that specifically targets that audience. So here's an example that I built. I built this one for buildthatagency.com. So this is just kind of a dummy markup, but you can go there if you want to check out the full. It's just a single page on Divi, but coffee shop websites. So here we go. Coffeeshopwebsites.net, obvious domain name. Okay. The imagery is a picture of a coffee shop. The content, we're coffee lovers and website builders. We go together like cream and sugar. So if somebody comes and says, hey, I own a golf course, and somehow they land on this website, they're going to be like, this is not the website for me. That is a great response, because it means that you've created such intentionality that coffee shop owners are going to go, ah, this is for me. And people who don't own coffee shops are going to go, ah, I should keep looking. And so contact us to get started on your coffee shop website. So you build everything specifically around targeting that little tiny segment of a segment, that specific industry. We're coming up to questions in just a minute. I've got one more slide and then we'll do Q&A. And the reason I do one more slide before the Q&A is because Q&A usually starts with the question, what should be included in your monthly service? So let me just give you that bonus. We talked about choosing an audience, building an audience, how to get in front of that audience. Let's talk about what's included in our monthly service before we get to the Q&A, and then we're gonna ask all those questions. So what's included in the monthly service? So what we include in our monthly service is hosting, WordPress management, that's your updates to your themes, your plugins, all that back-end stuff. We include all the subscriptions to our premium plugins and themes because the client doesn't actually own their website. They're renting it or leasing it from us. So we continue to be the owner of that website and those premium plugins and themes. We include 60 minutes of design time per month because we want the client to know that part of their service package, it includes all of the things that are required to have a website. We never want their website to go stale. We never want them to think to themselves, I really should update my menu on my website, but I also don't want to put out a bench fee this month because I'm having a low month. No, it's all included in your website service. And then we also include uptime monitoring. Now, depending on your industry, you could roll in things like that. For some industries, we would roll in domain name registration. Actually, I would recommend that for most industries. You could roll in email, whatever you might like to put in that service package. It could be Facebook ads, it could be social media management, it could be email newsletters to all their clients. But this as a minimum is what's needed. And even if you build custom websites, they're probably paying somebody else for these things, right? They're paying somebody else for hosting. They're paying somebody else for domain registration, which should be on that list, but it's not. They're paying somebody else, or they're doing it themselves to learn how to update WordPress. They're paying for premium themes or plugins that show up every year. And so instead of having them pay all these different people, all these different things, you simply roll it into your service package. You add on 60 minutes of design time per month. So you add on your 1 hour bench fee, and then you build in a recurring monthly service package. And now it is officially time for questions. So if you have a question, now is the time to unmute your mic and let's chat. Let's hear what questions you have.
There's definitely a lot of conversation happening in the chat, which is awesome.
I have a question.
Sure.
I am, I have a day job, but I also do, development on the side, and I have lots of websites that I've developed over the years for different clients. And I've never really gotten into the whole social media side of Twitter, Facebook groups, like all that stuff. And I'm really not interested in that. So what would you suggest for people like me who, want to build a little side business but not feel trapped into having to do all the different social channels?
Yeah. Do you have an industry in mind, or have you already selected one, or just give me a ballpark of where your industry would be?
Ballpark. Well, the one, basically the one niche that I have interested in right now are like electrolysis places. So my sister is she's electrologist, and she's referred people to me, mostly just like, hey, can you help this person? They want to buy a domain, or like not do full websites, but there's potential there for doing those. And that is kind of a niche market, so that would be something that I would be interested in doing.
So the first thing I would do is figure out your 125 rule and be sure that this business actually would sustain you, right? You would hate to tap out the entire market and realize it's only a fraction of the income you're wanting to replace. Right. So that would be the first step. And the second thing is that all of those medical offices probably have some things in common. So they have conventions that they go to. They have suppliers that they work with. They all get their equipment from the same place, or they all get their gloves from the same place, or, not necessarily the electrolysis equipment itself, but the gloves, and, they all have the same office suppliers, or 2 or 3 office suppliers, or those types of things. And then the next question would be, if that audience already exists and it meets the 125 rule, then how can you get in front of the people, or how can you connect with the people who've already connected with your target audience? So you don't have to do the Facebook groups, you don't have to do the Twitter, but maybe there is a magazine, an industry magazine. And so instead of taking all the time it would take to join the Facebook groups and get well known there, maybe it's worth investing in an advertisement in the industry magazine. Maybe it's worth having a conversation with the suppliers and seeing, do they have an email newsletter that they send out once a month, and can you sponsor that? And if the electrolysis supplier says no, well, maybe the rubber glove supplier says yes.
Yeah, right,
Or maybe
right,
the
yeah.
office supplier says yes.
Okay.
So I would try and find an avenue where somebody's already built trust with that audience and
Mhm.
figure out what it would take to get in front of that audience. And then the other option is, without doing any social media, you could go and cold call those offices. And again, depending on how you know the industry, maybe that's, you call ahead to let them know you're coming, or you call ahead to book an appointment, or you just show up at a certain time before the office opens, or you show up at the end of the day, or whatever it is, you'll learn those things based on your knowledge of the industry.
Cool. Okay, thanks.
I'm going to unshare this screen unless anybody else wants to Twitter QR code before I do that. I'm hoping I don't make a mess of it. Just a second. Oops. Am I back, or can you see my window and everything?
We still see your window and everything.
Help me, Michelle. What do I do?
I know, I'm trying to find it right now. There you go.
Okay. You took back the power. I like it.
I did. Cameron's
Okay.
got his hand. Cameron's got his hand
Cameron,
up.
you've got your hands up.
So do you have any thoughts on like website as a service versus like software as a service, like setting up a more of a platform like a WordPress.com sort of thing, as opposed to going through and building each and every site? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Are you talking about automating website building, or are you talking about creating a software that people in the industry would use for their own business?
Yeah, so setting up a theme with a bunch of options and preloading a bunch of plugins and putting all the sorts of things that most of these are all going to have, and then making it more or less self-serve.
Yeah, you could definitely take that approach. I have found that by giving my clients access to do self-serve, I end up spending my life resetting passwords and verifying emails and doing the recapture for them on a screen share on a Zoom call and all that kind of stuff. So for me, that has always been more hassle than it's worth. None of our clients have access to their website, even the ones who could be WordPress savvy. They simply send us an email and we make the changes that they need. I also think there is some value to having a done-for-you solution, in the sense that if somebody decides they no longer want to do it themselves, they may end up hiring somebody else who's going to do it for them. Now, maybe part of your service is we either do it for you or you do it yourself, and it's all built into this package. But I would be interested to see what kind of success you see with that.
I have my question. How do you know that you know the audience well enough to begin with?
My gut reaction is to know the hard way, in the sense that you're going to walk into a business and speak with them and realize you're going to realize at the same time as they do that you don't know what's going on. And so what you could do is you could speak to a consultant in that business. You could say, hey, I know you consult with, make it up, dentist offices. And so I would like to buy 2 hours of your time to talk with you about how I would market to those dentist offices. And so you can always talk to people who are in a consulting space who understand the industry inside and out, and they could review your website for you or with you. They could tell you the best time to reach somebody. They could tell you the words to use, the pain points in that industry. I wouldn't go into anything cold myself, because I think the best opportunity is to go in as prepared as you can be. And I also think that you're going to realize as you learn along the way. But I would find somebody who already knows an industry inside and out and try and get their attention in whatever fashion that is, and or consider a different industry that you might already know, right? So what is the industry that you would feel most comfortable in already knowing, compared to an industry where you see the potential, but you don't necessarily know that space?
Right.
The other option is to find somebody who might be retiring or semi-retiring from that industry in a sales position already. And I know that's a bit of a unicorn, but if you can find that person, it's really magic to your business and your industry, because they already know the sales, they know the inside talk, they know how to connect with the people, and they might already have contacts in the industry. They might be able to say to you, listen, I can get 10 websites in 2 weeks because of the people I already know in the industry. And so you lose out on some of the revenue because you're going to pay them a commission, but you make up for that in expertise and the speed of your growth.
Makes sense. I had started something similar to this. I already had some templates created based on, like, my last 4 or 5 clients were all consultants.
Okay.
And but it was like, okay, I'm not really sure. I know these sites worked for my past clients, but like, oh, they work in general for everybody. So I was like, oh, feeling stuck on that. But
so the consultants would be the larger industry. And then the success that I found is in finding a segment of that segment.
yeah,
So are the consultants that you've worked for all in a similar industry? Like they all consult for,
yeah,
senior skydiving
they
experts?
they were actually all evaluation consultants for nonprofits.
Okay. So
So
that is a common thread.
But it almost felt like too niche. So I was like, I don't.
Well, I would run the 125/5 rule and see at the end of the day, if you charge them X number of dollars per month that you think is reasonable, is that enough to actually generate the revenue you need? And I think you might be surprised.
Yeah,
Pleasantly
it's just
surprised.
trying to figure out how to get in front of them because they're all in paid associations. But yeah, okay, thanks.
Cool. Next, I think Emily, I think your hand was up next.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for that presentation. That was really great. I kind of have 2 unrelated questions. The first one, I was wondering about competition. So if you have multiple clients in the same industry, do you have any delay between clients if they're in the same region? Because, you would also be providing some SEO services for people, I would assume. So.
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I like to do is focus on what makes each business unique. And that is so trite. That was definitely the answer that was going to come. Such a boring answer. Focus on what makes your client unique. But the reality is, so for campgrounds, there is approximately 8 million campgrounds in Florida. And so when we're doing a campground in Florida, we might look at their proximity to Disney, or their proximity to a certain beach, or they've got a pool and a hot tub, and that makes them unique from any other campground in their county, or in their, in their city. So focus on that, like that, what is that thing that makes them unique from all the other people, right? So, we're a campground in Tampa, for instance, with a pool that's kid friendly, or a campground in Tampa that has shuffleboard that is for 55 and older adults. Those are 2 different SEO strategies, and they could be across the street from each other.
My second question is, if you have ownership of people's hosting and domain and do all their content for them, what happens if for some reason you are out of action, like something happens to you? So do you have any, plan, like fallback plan, like that you give your passwords to somebody else? Like, how do you handle that?
Well, hopefully you're able to grow your team quickly. And that's one of the things that monthly recurring revenue will allow you to do. So taking a sick day doesn't hit as hard when your industry is grown to the point where you service 100 clients at $200 a month, and you've got a $20,000 a month business, and you can bring on a VA or a part-time designer or whatever else that might be to pick up the slack on a sick day. So that would be like the sick day, but also you want to take a vacation now and then, or you want to just take a Friday off, or you want to just call in bored, right? Like you need to have those things built in. As far as like what would happen if you know, I disappeared from the planet, then
Right. Not to be too morbid, but I mean, as I get older, I start to think about these things, you know, what happens when there's
yeah,
no
I mean,
more.
my goal is to build the business so it runs
Yeah.
itself. And so it wouldn't really matter if I wasn't collecting the paycheck on the other end. Those clients would continue to be serviced. Also, there is a large market for people who are in an industry like ours, who are web designers, who don't want to go through that starting point of having to go from 0 clients to building a portfolio of 100 clients. And when you get to 100 clients, your business looks really, really appealing on recurring revenue. So there's also a possibility that you get purchased, you get bought out, you get offers you didn't realize. You know, if you can go to somebody and say, hey, the business runs itself, it generates $150,000 a year profit based on 200 clients a month. And that's on top of everybody on the team getting paid and paying their bills and making the business run and grow by itself. All of a sudden, the opportunity for a buyout strategy is really realistic.
Very interesting. Thanks, Adam.
Of course. Trevor, I think you're next. Sorry, Michelle, I keep taking your job. Are you supposed to be doing hands up?
I like it when you just keep going. It's awesome. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to reiterate, thank you for the presentation. That was a different perspective, I think, than I've seen before. So the first one, and I think this is just clarification. So you're saying that you have the passwords, you do all the stuff, you do all the word pressing, you don't have them have logins and so on.
Right.
Okay. So then with that, your 60 minutes of design each month, do you prompt people to say, okay, here are the types of things that I would like to see. Show me pictures of your food, send me pictures of your pizza, things like that. Do you prompt them, or is that a 60 minutes that is, if somebody takes advantage of it, great. If not, that's 60 minutes that I have free?
Yeah, it's all customer initiated.
Okay.
So the reality is, so the reason that I'm using numbers up to 2022 is the campground agency got acquired in 2022. And I've got a non-disclosure for anything that's happened since that time. So I can give you information up to that point in time. I can't talk to you about what's happened since then. In 2022, we had 80 clients that we serviced on a monthly basis. And total, we were doing about 10 hours a week of support.
Okay.
So about 40 hours a month. So clients would call once in a while and say, hey, I need this updated. And most of the time that was like, hey, you know, we're doing Christmas hours at the office, or we're updating our rates this year. And those changes take 10 to 15 minutes. I don't prompt clients for changes unless something's obviously outdated. Like, hey, you know, it's the middle of June and you've still got a Christmas tree picture on your homepage. I would like to change that for you. I really feel like, you know, reaching out. The other thing you could do is, which is something I've considered for the other industries that I've started creating brands for also, is to set myself a reminder. Like you could set up an automation that if I haven't heard from this client in 3 months, then I check in with them. And I say, hey, you know, is there anything you need for your website? We're happy to help. I just want to remind you, because I never want them to forget about the value they're getting and then decide they no longer want our service, right? Because they forget about the value, right? It's like if you haven't watched Netflix in 3 months, all of a sudden it becomes easy to go, I don't need it anyway, right? And then all of a sudden they remind you they're releasing a new Star Wars series. And it's like, oh, darn, I'm going to have to keep it till December, right? That's kind of, I think that's a healthy trigger. And I think that's what you're getting at is to kind of remind them of the value that you bring to the table to keep the retention up.
Okay. And then for your hosting, so are you basically, so I know how I host my websites. I go out and I have my, you know, infinite website list and so on. Are you doing that, or what type of hosting do you offer your folks? I mean, are you going
Yeah.
to SiteGround or someplace like that? Or are you getting one of the top tier packages?
Yeah, so there's a couple options, and I've actually got a new brand that I'm launching with a sales guy who knows an industry inside and out. And so maybe we could check back in 6 months and talk about how that's going. But with him, we're having that conversation. So I have my own server. I shouldn't say that. I have a designated server at a server hosting company. It's local. It's not sitting in my basement or something, but they look after that. It's not a GoDaddy or a SiteGround, but they basically provide the server space. And I have somebody on my team that's part-time who is semi-retired, who does all the tech stuff for me. So he's fulfilling all the WordPress updates and the management, the troubleshooting, and all those types of things. The other option is to go with like a managed hosting with SiteGround, at X number of dollars per month. And you just factor that into the cost of what you're going to recharge the client, right? So, you have to look at some things. The pricing module in the online trading at Build That Agency is kind of complicated, because we look at all of the different factors that go into price, and then what you have to increase those costs to actually be profitable, right?
Right.
So, yes, you could do like a SiteGround. Maybe that costs $20 a month for managed hosting, but you're completely hands off. And maybe that's a better option up front than hiring a tech or doing it yourself for X number of hours per month. And maybe that scales, as enterprise. Maybe you get a wholesale discount once you get to 30 clients or 50 clients or 100 clients. So we've considered that. Currently what we do, my own server, got a tech guy part-time, and he looks after all those pieces of the puzzle. Does that answer your question, Trevor?
I think so. Thank you.
Okay. Please feel free to follow up.
Okay.
Andy, I'd love to chat with you.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, thanks for this presentation. It's certainly an eye-opener. I think I agree with everybody. As I said at the intro, I'm a website hack as far as anything goes. I'm an ISP and a registrar. I have been for 25 plus years. And I've got a colo site where I've got a couple of servers. But my question comes up is, how do you find good developers that aren't going to run away with your IP?
Yeah, so what I do specifically for this model is I've built out a Divi template myself that is specific to the industry. It's got X number of pages, these pages, it's got, just like the coffee shop websites.net. So what we do is when a client shows up for us and says, yes, I'm ready to start your service, we get their signature, we tell them everything that's outlined in their service contract, of course. The next step we have them do is fill out an onboarding form. And this onboarding form basically answers all of the questions top to bottom that we're going to copy and paste and put in place into the template. So for instance, at the top of coffee shop websites, it says, something like, we go together like cream and sugar.
Yeah, no, I'm not. That side I understand. I lost audio for about a minute or two. I understand the onboarding process. Right? I do it in my day job for global corporations. That's not so worry. But I'm on about finding web developers, because A, I don't have the time to go and develop code. B, I can get so far down the code structure. Right, I'm comfortable with PHP, Python, etc., and some of the page building processes. But when there's small pieces that would just take me 6 weeks to do, how do you find the right developer group organization to outsource that small piece of contract work, but not lose the IP, right?
I see. So they don't take your idea and run away with it.
Right. It doesn't be, they don't own it, right? The IP is still owned by myself and my client. My client has ultimate ownership of it, but I have the right to use.
Yeah, I would love to hear from anybody else who has a tip there. It's not something that I really get into, because all of our templates are basically just pictures and text. But does anybody else have an idea they could jump in? Some feedback.
I would say that you need to have a contract with anybody that you work with. So that would include like a non-compete, non-disclosure agreements for anyone you're working with.
Okay.
Emily, do you have anywhere specifically that you would track that person down? I've used Upwork before for designers, but does anybody have any other tools that might be helpful for Andy?
I was just looking at, there's underrepresentedintech.com is a website that you can look for that has developers and designers and other people on there. And I think through meetups like this is another place to meet, people who are potentially reliable and know what they're doing.
So if there's anybody here on this one, I've got a small problem which I'm trying to solve. And developers are going to charge me a fortune to fix it. I don't believe, it's that amount of work. I've done 90% of the work, and I can do it in pure PHP, but trying to integrate it within a page builder, Elementor is the common one which I use. It goes squirrely. Funny things happen.
There's also an Elementor Facebook group that you can join.
Response times I'm finding now, 2 to 3 weeks before anybody gets back, no matter how often I try to push it on those sort of things. And like somebody else said earlier on, I'm not a social media person. I don't have a Twitter account. I have a Facebook account because I got told I either have a Facebook or I don't get a job. And I've got a LinkedIn account, but I never really use them. I don't trust them.
Andy, do you want to share your contact information in the chat, and maybe someone here would get in touch with you to help you out with that?
That's a great idea. And I see that Laura put gowp.com in the chat as well. They also do the kind of work you're talking about. On Codable, you could go to Codable's website. They are a network of people who do exactly those kinds of things, project-based assistance, all developer work. So Codable, I can't remember what the website is, Codable.com, Codable HQ, something. Their Twitter is Codable HQ. Let me find it.
And the other one I put in was the quickie hire, because Emily Hunkel from GoWP also is the COO for that too. I just found that out recently. So
yeah, and Trisha added focus WP.co, and Codable is Codable.io. Great. James, welcome. It's good to see you again.
Hey, good to see you again. Hey, so I'm sorry I'm a little late on this, but is this looking for assistance finding network of people to help you on your project? Is that the question?
Ultimately, I didn't think this forum was to sort of blatantly call out and say, hey, I need help, something's gone wrong, or whatever.
Okay.
A specific sequence of events to be triggered on a web page, and I can't seem to get it to work. It goes squirrely. I can get one of the 3 elements to work, and if it's similar to the second or third, things start to go sideways.
Okay, yeah.
I'm willing to show anybody and put up the website later on a one-on-one. They have time.
Yep. So Andy's put his contact information in the chat. If you want to follow up with him about some potential help, you can do that. He's got his email and his phone number in there.
And I am in Rochester, so I can meet anybody for coffee and beer.
Well, not anybody, because we've got a lot of people in this room today. They're all over the world.
I don't mind flying out to Adelaide.
What's that?
I don't mind flying out to Adelaide.
Oh, okay. There you go. James.
Hey, does anyone know, so in reverse, the opposite, know any of a platform or network where I can find a designer to work on a project with a developer like myself? If anyone has
those links that I put in are for developer and designers. The Go WP and then the Quickly Hire.
We hire.
And I'm sure they
Okay.
Michelle is the underrepresented tech for designers too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
What type of design are you looking for, James?
So I'm currently working on just did a kickoff meeting today, and it's a full website design for a professor from a university. The good thing is that their entire system is on WP Engine, and it's not, held back by IT parameters within a university. So, but he wants to kind of have his own branding, so logo design, UI design, the whole works for the entire site. So, and I already stated in my contract that I'm not doing any design work, but if it's copy, content, or imagery, photography, or if it's a design, I can find someone who can within my network. But they will have to, the independent contractor would have to send an independent contract to them for the additional work.
Said branding too. So are you looking for branding / designer?
Yeah, so it's like
the logo, like logos design too.
Yeah, I mean, if the logo, so it has to look consistent. So if the logo is of one shape or color, it should be consistent throughout the board.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the last developer kind of just took a template and then stuck a logo in there. And so it doesn't look consistent. And that's what he needs right now.
Yep. I would suggest anybody interested in following up with any of these things, you should be able to download the chat from this before you leave, which will have all of that contact information and all of those links in it as well. Other questions for Adam before we kind of move into more general conversation, which is how we usually end our time together. Adam, anything else that you wanted to add before we move on to our general time?
Well, I did mention some of the chat conversation was about which industry to choose or which industry might be potential. And so I wrote a list a while back on Twitter of 70 industries that I think 70 industries that could be a fit for this type of service model. So I've put that in the chat if anybody wants to go check out that Twitter thread, and maybe it sparks some new ideas for you.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Awesome. So Adam, you are welcome to hang out for the rest of this because you may have answers that we don't have. So this is by no means asking you to leave because it's not. Stick around if you can. But I do want to open it up to general questions, whether it's your WordPress business, whether it's a specific site question, if you have new things you've discovered and you'd like to share with us, any of that. If you have feedback from the weekend, if you were at WordCamp, all of it. It's all, the floor is open. All you have to do is raise your hand and we will go in order. Not everybody all at once, please. Sorry, I can't help myself.
All right,
sometimes.
I'll start.
I'll jump in.
Okay, Laura.
Go ahead, Joseph.
Okay. So there's been a lot of work on the block editor, and I found that a lot of people are kind of like, no, not the block editor. I use Elementor or I use Divi or whatever. I'm the same. I use Divi and Elementor and other page builders as well. But I've seen a presentation recently where the block editor has actually advanced a lot, and you can build a really cool website just using the block editor. And if you look at WordPress, like from the past, it started with, well, we do the back end, you get the theme, you can't touch the footer, you can't touch the header, you can play in the middle. And then after that, they're getting more into the design side. And I can see there's a little learning curve in it, but I think the future's heading more where WordPress is trying to do the whole thing. And the good thing about using the block editor, I haven't used it myself, I'm just going to look into it, is it's all integrated in WordPress. It's all built into WordPress. And also there's a lot of stuff that is going to change. Either the page builders are going to integrate into the block editor, or their market is going to stay as it is, because we don't know what's going to happen until we actually see how it progresses. But I'm seeing that like there's a lot of work on the front end, same as the back end. And I think right now the block editor has reached a stage where, yes, there's a little bit of a learning curve, but in the long run, we've been using, like most of us has been using WordPress for like, you know, more than 1 year. But the new people that come in, the first thing that they see is the block editor. So there'll be a new market for that, and either everything will go block editor or we'll stay with the page builders and the block editors. But I think right now, if you're kind of like, no, not the block editor, it's a good opportunity to check it out. And I saw this theme called Ollie that actually lets you build the whole website from start to end with no plugins, just no plugins. But I recommend a security one, because security is always important. And it's very optimized, very fast, optimized for speed. So there's a lot of work that has went into that. And I reckon it's something worth looking at, even to play with.
Excellent. I use Cadence almost exclusively now because it does work with the block editor, and I absolutely adore that it seamlessly fits so well. So plus one for the block editor for sure. I was not paying attention to who raised their hand first, so I think Laura.
No, it was James.
Oh, okay, James then.
Hey, so no, I wanted to add to Ollie. Ollie is also something that I've heard that was pretty good. I don't know if you heard about WP Tavern. They wrote an article about how he tried to release a version into WP.org, and he got some pushback because the documentation that came with it seemed a little bit more thorough, if you will, compared to what WP is actually putting out. So he has to kind of strip a lot of the really important stuff to basically get you up to speed with block editing. So, but that's sort of, I don't know, there's a lot of back and forth with that. But I do know that Ole is a good one. And in terms of theme builders, I have a lot of nonprofits that I work with right now. And I think theme builders are usually the better way to go for them, because if one day or in the future, when I'm no longer volunteering for that organization, someone can pick up the slack, but they also don't have to like dive into the code and muck around, because theme builders have pretty good documentation in terms of how things are put together. The only thing is that if their license is over, you got to tell the clients to kind of make sure that they renew their themes.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Yeah.
Laura.
Yeah, I want to comment on both things because Joseph, since I'm the newbie here with only being in WordPress for the year, I kind of stayed away from the site builders and stuff because it would just be a different path for me. So I'm trying to stay to the core, and with being a content creator for the training team, focusing on all the new stuff that's coming out. So it is really exciting. It's getting to be a lot easier and user friendly. And that's hopefully the push that we want for WordPress is to have that user friendliness to it. And there are multiple ways to do things. And I think that's what kind of catches people off, is that they might try and do something one way and then they forget it, and then they end up doing it another way, and it kind of gets you all confused. But it's also a good thing because then, it's easy to kind of manipulate things on that instance. So hopefully, I know the training team with the 6.4, that's going to be the new big push in November, is it, that they're releasing that?
I believe so.
And I really like all the, the newer features and stuff. It's just so fast, and we can't create the stuff fast enough and have workshops on that. And then on the Ollie thing, Mike is a great facilitator, and I love his presentations. Check out his website too for Ollie. He does such great presentations, and that was the thing. He's trying to make a dashboard that's so user friendly that all the information that you need is right in your dashboard instead of having to go outside the theme. And it's so sad that we can't get that okayed within the themes directory for him having a free version of it. He also has the paid version that's going to have a little bit more bulk. So that was one of the Twitter questions that he had asked. Like, do I keep going forward with this because of all the stipulations they're putting on me? Or do I just, do it on my own, do a free download on his own? So hopefully we can get that resolved and get Ali out. It's a really nice theme to use on that aspect.
I just posted the link to the Tavern article in the chat if anybody's interested in seeing more. Thank you, Laura. James.
Hey, so one additional thing in terms of block editor themes is that I know that you don't no longer have to technically make a child theme off of the theme because it's all component based. You could technically override the whatever theme that comes with it, and you can still update, but then you're basically hooking in only specific blocks for your specific site or brand. I'll have to take a look at that, but I'm pretty sure that's there was a podcast. I'll actually see if I can find it. View source by, I can't pronounce her name. Araba.
Aruba.
Yeah. She had an episode that explained about not having to do that now because of the way it's structured.
Yeah,
So
so
there's
you're
a
almost
benefit
like
to
doing a separate like style variation with because of the theme JSON file that's in there. And so you're
Yeah,
kind of
because
adding
everything
that
will,
onto the theme.
yeah. And also the theme.json file should be a little bit more streamlined to make global changes if you need to. But if you do need to hook in additional things, you can still use hooks and filters via PHP.
But for a lot of the newer people that don't know coding, it's nice that they can go in and create a website without having to know that aspect of it.
Absolutely. Other questions,
But then the
topics?
question is, are we going to end up then having people do their own websites, and then the reoccurring revenue, is that going to kind of go away?
I think that is impossible because people can't handle doing their own websites. They're overwhelmed by content and all the decisions that you have to make. So no, they want someone else to do it for sure.
Sela Ree, I think she mentioned once in her podcast that we're kind of pushing the audience in two different directions. One is either you push them to a theme builder, which they can do it themselves. But the thing is, sometimes there's some customization that they dearly need, and it's plugin based or specific to the site or brand, and you need to hire a developer. But then at that point, it becomes, okay, the theme builder doesn't do it. I'm paying the theme builder, but I'm also going to pay the developer. I'm just going to go over to pay a developer to kind of build these more extremely custom things. But then they're also saying that what if the developer just suddenly drops off the planet of the Earth, what do I do? That's sort of where like WordPress.com is coming from, but at the same time, it's like a tug of war. It really depends on what the client wants and needs.
Well, and I think that doing your documentation would be really beneficial to put in notes so that, yes, if you're the developer and you're not going to be working on that site anymore, that you can be able to hand that off to somebody and they can just look at your notes and understand it clearly of what you have done, and putting the comments within the code and organizing the code so that it's easy to find the different sections and stuff.
Anything else tonight? We still have time.
I'm like complete silence. Dun dun dun.
Well, I will tell you, if you didn't make it to WordCamp Rochester this weekend, Kira who is just an amazing person with the ability to crank out the videos in a very short fashion. Should have all of the videos on WordPress.tv sometime this week, I believe. So all of those will be available from our keynote all the way through to the panel discussion we had at the end on open source. We had also, I don't think this one wasn't recorded, but we even had New York State Senator do our opening remarks, which was pretty cool. But he came in for that. It was a great time, yeah, for sure. We have, I don't know what we're gonna be for our topic next month, but I will figure it out between now and November. We got a little bit of time, but I'll try to get that on the schedule. It'll be the first Monday in November, like we always do. So if you have ideas, things you want to hear or learn about, please let me know, because I'm more than happy to find speakers to talk about those things and help us keep moving our businesses forward and our projects forward and everything that we do. And I was reading what Joseph, but I will be there. Yes, you will. We'll have you here for sure.
Yeah, Joseph, September in the United States is a beautiful time of year.
Fantastic. That's what
It's
I
when
like to
the
hear.
leaves are changing. I mean, it's like a sweater, wet weather, or jumper. Is that what Aussies say?
That's
Jumper.
what we say, jumper. Yeah. That's
Yep,
great.
for
No,
sure.
Rochester's really beautiful. Like, I've seen a lot of stuff. It's a really, really beautiful place. And I want to check out all your waterfalls in the middle of town as well.
Yeah. It's kind of cool little feature that right as you drive, I drive over it all the time, you forget about it. But as I was showing people from outside of the United States, even our area, they feel like, I've heard of the Erie Canal and and some of the things that we have here. And does that building say Kodak on it? And those kinds of things that made it, a lot more fun. So
That facility is
great.
actually pretty massive.
which one is
That's
that?
pretty cool.
I took a 16-minute detour up to one of the Great Lakes because I was like,
Oh yeah.
well, when I'm going to be able to kind of come by here. So I drove up, checked the Great Lakes, and drove past the Kodak factory. And it's like, it's massive. It's
It is.
amazing.
And it used to be bigger.
Yeah.
Really?
And I also didn't know like how Kodak here in Australia, they say it's in New York.
Right.
And then they say Xerox was made in New York. But I
Yes.
never knew about New York State till 3 years ago. I always know New York, but not New York State. And Rochester did a lot of stuff. It's quite amazing, like really smart on the tech. And the funny thing is Kodak invented the first digital camera, but they didn't
Yes.
release it early enough, which
Yeah.
made them be behind. And Xerox
Yes.
invented computer networking and the computer, but they never profited from that. It's quite like
And the mouse was invented
with a
at
mouse.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then and we also have Bausch and Lomb originated here as well, for optics.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really, really, really a lot of like a hub for technology. And
Yes.
it would be a really nice place to visit and check out all your museums and the Museum of the Strong and all the interesting stuff that you
Yep.
have there.
Yeah, and a garbage plate, of course.
Oh, yes, I've heard of that too. But you have to like have a couple of drinks and then go and have a garbage plate.
I mean, I don't do the drink part, and I still enjoy them. But yes, I understand they're really good hangover cure. For sure. Anybody else? Anything else? Yes, Joseph. Sorry, I cut you off.
The frozen custard.
Abbott's
I heard
frozen.
that's
Yep,
really good. Yeah,
it really
gotta
is.
check that out.
You'll have to plan to spend a little bit of time so you can see it all.
Yeah.
I
Fantastic.
live for Abbott's.
I love Abbott's too, and now there's a drive-through
know.
one, so
I know.
easier. Excuse me, I'm gonna stop the recording here.